Welcome to the aforementioned unnamed yet podcast, episode 3.
Yep.
Episode 3. We are very excited to be here in the Jubilee Christian Church sanctuary once again. Myself, Jonathan Iman. As a guest host, we have today my ridiculously beautiful wife, Tracie Iman.
Thank you.
I'll give you a moment to introduce yourself, and of course we got the ever popular Mr. Kevin Ott, the extraordinaire. Tracie, I guess just give us a real quick bio, where you're born, where you're from, what you like.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, I'm Tracie, and I was born in Washington State, Tacoma, Washington, to be more specific. I was an Army brat, kind of traveled the world a little bit, until I was about 5, and then came back to California and lived here for like 27 years, something like that. Went to a specialty animal training school down in the Los Angeles area, and just kind of pursued my career in animal training and animal behavior, and just always had a huge interest with animals and, psychology, stuff like that. So that is my life in a nutshell.
Awesome. I didn't know you were an Army brat.
Definitely a brat for sure.
What branch of the military was your family in?
Army.
Army. Okay, so you really did mean Army. So.
Army brat.
Although she has a brother who's in the Air Force.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Keeping the tradition alive one way or another.
Yep.
Awesome.
I'm not sure, Kevin, if you have any opening statements that you felt burning in your heart or anything like that, or if you just want to get a move on.
Well, we were talking about the question of our society now. Are we close to each other anymore in society? Has social media changed that? What's the quality of our relationships in society? That's a question.
Yeah, that was, for those who I hope will become interested in the near future and bother listening to us. We right now have a private Facebook group where we kind of toss around ideas throughout the week. Tracie's also in on that group, and that was one of the threads that seemed to gain a greater amount of momentum. So, just reiterating or whatever, we were kind of thinking about the comparison to, back in the day, you see, our parents' generation where you knew your neighbors. You did the go next door to borrow a cup of sugar and of course, technology has changed a lot of that. Now you don't necessarily have to ask your next door neighbor to watch your kid. You can come up with some nanny cam or whatever, and there's sort of a dichotomy that exists where you can go onto your phone and your phone will tell you that you have 350 friends, and you can scroll through all this stuff and see what's going on in their lives. But you can also spend years never speaking to them or really seeing their face, and really all you see is what they're willing to post. So, how well do you know them? How well are you serving them, not only as a friend, but, in our case, as servants of the Lord? Are we really engaging that, or are we kind of letting it slide because technology has made it a little bit easier? And are we generally becoming more isolated, actually, where instead of trying to develop relationships with the people that are at an arm's distance, you accept that you have however many followers on Twitter and leave it at that. Meanwhile, your next door neighbor could be suffering and you're just on Twitter or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it changes it. It makes it all abstract. It's kind of like your relationships with people. It's almost training you to think of them as a digital activity, not something that you do face to face. And we were talking about how the generation growing up is really bad at face to face and on the phone. And working in college for a bunch of years, I saw a lot of students did not know how to talk on the phone or communicate face to face.
Yeah.
Which is ironic.
Yeah. Well, I've been a manager a few times, and like through those experiences of being a manager again with the college students not really know how to like talk to people. It was, for me, it was just kind of awkward to see them just kind of stumble on like, one, doing the instructions that we ask, which is like, hey, I need a resume and a cover letter. And like some of them can't even do those basic things. And it's like, how do you expect to like get a real job? Like this is just, a minimal, like minimum wage job. And so just seeing that first step, and then the next step is actually like meeting the person who's interviewing them. And even then they just have a hard time like, oh, there's a person in front of me. What do? I guess I'll just talk and talk and talk and hopefully something will stick. And it's just like,
yeah,
I didn't ask that question. Like, why are you telling me this? And I actually had somebody cyber stalk me, and that was kind of scary.
Wow.
But it was nice of her to tell me that she was cyber stalking me. So now it's like, okay, I'm going to put like a little bit more private on my,
it's not like she was stalking you for evil purposes.
No.
Though, but that is a great example in the sense that instead of, hey, you know what, I think I'm going to like make sure that I stop by a couple times this week and get some FaceTime with you and talk with you and get to know you as an individual and develop a working relationship with you, she defaulted to, I'm going to check out your Facebook. I'm going to, email you. I'm going to go and look at the website for the company that you run, et cetera. I'm going to get to know you in this sort of detached fashion.
That's weird. It's really weird.
And it didn't sit right.
Yeah. She's like, you have a cute son. I was like, oh, how do you know I have a son? Oh my gosh.
Getting a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It is, the more you think about it, the creepier it gets if you really think about it. I think what's really sobering is when you think about the beginning of Facebook, if you go back to Harvard, to Mark Zuckerberg, 2003, the first thing he made, people don't realize, was not Facebook, but was a website for Harvard where you go and you rate which girls are ugly and which girls are pretty.
Really?
Just think about that for
I
a moment.
remember that.
Let that sink in a little bit and think about that.
That was him.
The platform that now defines the social lives of millions of people came from that mind.
From vanity.
From vanity.
Pure vanity.
That's the spirit that it came from. And that really makes you think about what Facebook is now today and how really it is. It has a little bit of that spirit a little bit too.
Oh yeah, it can be. I mean, it can certainly be really, narcissistic, at the drop of a hat.
Face level.
Yeah.
Or shallow, I guess.
Yeah.
One dimensional.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that's the thing. Or you hear people say facade for something, and that even has, the same, root word in it. I'm sorry, I was cutting you off there.
Well, I was just going to say that definitely Facebook is, some girls take it to a whole new level of it. It is Facebook. And every day, every hour, it's a picture of their face. Whether it's, look at me with my coffee, or, oh, look at me with duck face, or, oh, I just had, lunch with Brandy and stuff like that. And it's just like, oh my gosh, you just posted like 30 minutes ago, and it's your face, and it's your face again. And, oh, wait, there's food in there. There's a plate of food. Oh, no, there's your face. So it's just like, man, the psychology behind that of that much narcissism and, the ego just wanting to be fed. It's like, it's insatiable.
It becomes,
it's not going to have an end.
Yeah, it gets dark.
Yeah, it gets pretty bad.
I remember, speaking with my dad, who, I've mentioned, I think, once before. I love him as a resource for these social subjects because he is a psychotherapist and that doesn't mean that he just sees nothing but crazy people 24/7. I'm sure the majority of his clients are people who blend into society just fine. But anyways, that's not the point. He, of course, has to stay up on studying and the articles and whatnot. And I remember him telling me a while back, a few years back, that there was a study done on children, I think 8 years old and younger, and they were using the same testing methodologies from, I believe, studies back in the 60s that go that far back, where they simply show pictures to these kids of people's faces, and somebody's crossing their eyebrows together in a check, and their lips are pressed together and thin, and somebody from my parents' generation would immediately see that is anger. That is anger, and then there's another picture and the eyebrows are sort of up and sloped outward and the eyes are wide and the lips are slightly open a little bit and the face looks a little bit like drawn from blood, and like that is fear, and they take that exact same test to these kids, nowadays, and the recognition of facial cues has very drastically gone down, and so they're predicting that they were saying confrontation, but a lot of people think of that as a negative thing. Well, no, confrontation, what they really meant is just a face-to-face interaction, and so these kids are getting worse and worse at being able to tell if they're making you happy, if they're making you violently angry, if they are, making you worried, if they're, our faces can actually show, dozens of various subtle emotional things, and so they predict that relationships in general will suffer. That marriages in general, you're trying to get a point across to one another, whether it's constructive or it's, maybe a little bit negative but necessary, that all of a sudden we don't know how to handle that because we've gotten so used to clicking like or not clicking like, or, even just computers in and of themselves, they are command machines. And so you tell the computer to do this thing and it does it, but then you have to work with a human, and that human's not a computer, and you say, hey, do it this way, and it's not computing, they're not getting it, and,
right.
and all of a sudden these disagreements come up that could be avoidable.
Well, along the lines of children kind of not understanding very good facial recognition, I know a lot of parents today, they're using iPhones and Androids and all the smart devices as a pacifier to, instead of entertaining the child with the typical like coloring book or, hey, look outside or go climb a tree or could you just please be still and be quiet, like how I grew up, or how most
social
of us
discipline.
grew up. And where is my train of thought? Needs to come back to the station. That kids or babies, actually toddlers, before even the age of 1, they're starting to use the ability to swipe and to tap and to do all those things. And although it might be a smart game or just something that should be keeping them stimulated, they're not really learning, like seeing a mouth move and how to say the proper vowels, and just like seeing how language is supposed to work. Because even if a phone is talking to a kid or you've got your baby Einstein in the background, they can hear it, but they don't see it. And with technology, it pushes us more forward, but it also kind of, draws us back a little bit because we're not learning how we're supposed to, like, from an animal standpoint, we're kind of monkey see, monkey do. And, technology is not the monkey see, monkey do, because it is a computer. It is a machine. It doesn't work like us. Yes, it's smart. We could be as smart as the machine, but, again, that's not really how we're supposed to be, developing.
Yeah. The whole question just makes me think about body language and how rich that is, how much information is in body language, or like what you were talking about, the facial and what you were saying about learning, to see that, the mouth and all that. It reminded me of a spy novel I read by Robert Ludlum. I can't remember what it was called. I'm sorry, but the protagonist, he had the ability to read micro expressions. And that's, it's interesting that the face makes these micro expressions that for it's a split second, fraction of a second, they're showing exactly what they really think. And this guy, the spy, would use his ability to read those, and he could know instantly if someone was lying or telling the truth. It was just fascinating the way they explored that in the novel. I mean, and there was a show based around that too. I can't remember what it's called, but I think it was called Liar, actually.
Really? Oh yeah, yeah.
I think he had the same ability.
Lie to me. Lie to me.
Yes, he had the same ability.
Yep. No, and actually, Frank Herbert, when he wrote Dune, he was projecting 10,000 years into the future, and they had these characters, the Bene Gesserits, and that was part of your Bene Gesserit training was exactly those things, those micro expressions where they would ask you a question, and they had been so finely trained that they could actually, like, how there's a blood vessel, a vein that runs through your temple. They'd ask you a question, and they could see if that pumped, and that they knew if you were telling the truth or not.
Yeah, and your respiration, they could see, perspiration.
They could see your lungs expand more on that one breath, and they could immediately know the truth without you ever saying anything. And of course, this is so projected so far in the future that they could actually. They could control their own micro reactions, and they could actually, do these little kind of hand motions and speak two languages at once. It's a science fiction thing, but it is in a certain sense ironic that Herbert, who wrote that in I believe the 40s or maybe the early 50s, he was still we were so technologically advanced at that point that he was still looking at it in the framework of interfacing being something that you are doing between two human faces, and that would sort of evolve into this highly sophisticated thing, and now here we are walking in the future, and we've abandoned it. We're leaving it up to 140 characters of reaction, and we could be doing ourselves a disservice. It is nice, but there are positives. But I don't know and then I'm sorry to be taken over here, but when it comes to children, it's definitely proven that the way their brains work, the way that they are developing in ages 1 through 5, is almost specifically by watching people, watching their faces, watching their hands, etc., etc. So, as we adults begin to become more and more accepting of just putting a screen in front of them, we really could be hurting them more seriously than we think, because those stages are so formative. So it may not seem like a big deal that you're not telling your kid to go out and climb a tree, or, hey, you know what, we're in a restaurant, we're trying to have, some conversation here. Why don't you, not the be seen and not heard kind of thing, but hey, why don't you try to understand what's going around here, and then when somebody talks about something that you like, wait for a nice pause in there, and then say, hey, I like those things. Or if you want to bring up a subject, then you find a socially acceptable way to do it, and not just interrupt and blurt it out and I want attention now and whatnot. And we might be shooting ourselves in the foot, even further, when we're not giving our kids the opportunity to sit and try to learn those things through observation. And that's really the only choice. You can't come up with an application for your Android that's going to get them good at those types of social graces. So then, if they are smart, let's say they really are smart as a whip, and they go to college and whatnot, they still find themselves at a disadvantage, because by the time they have to interact with customers or interact with a boss or a manager, they're so socially inept that their intelligence is almost doing nothing for them at that point. Yeah. And it's a scary thing to think about.
Yeah, there's this whole different kind of intelligence called emotional intelligence, and that's where your ability to read other people's emotions. There's a whole field of that.
It's EQ.
Yeah, it was kind of a trendy thing, but actually I think it's a legitimate study. But it is convicting, because it is, as a parent, it's so easy just to throw a technology at your kids and not think about it. But because it takes more effort on our part as parents to get them to do things that I think parents are lazy, myself included.
Yeah.
So it's
convicting.
And they also watch us on our phones all the time. And it makes me wonder, man, I spend too much time on my phone.
Yeah. No, and I think you're right. It's not just a one of those things that you can just say, oh, these people are doing it or those people are doing it and whatnot. If anything, I really like that point that you made, Kevin, because the truth of the matter is, I mean, you and I, we both only have, or all of us, I guess here, we only have one child as of yet, and honestly, having a child now is bringing us back to, okay, how do I clearly communicate with this person who has limited vocabulary and whatnot, and we as grown-up individuals, our character is still being formed. Our brains are still, searching for knowledge and whatnot, and going through those difficult challenges with your child, I think, makes you a better, more responsive adult. Hopefully it makes you a better husband and wife and whatnot. And so if we're getting used to just throwing the phone at the kid or escaping into our phone or iPad or what have you, then our character is stunted as well. Mm-hmm. And we're supposed to be the examples. So, it's a good thing to think of, like, well, hey, no, let's not make this an us and them thing, because it's an everyone thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's get Tracie in the mix here.
Oh, okay.
Tracie, I'm going to interview you really quick.
Oh, okay.
Do you know your neighbors? Do you talk to them?
Okay. So maybe, actually, it's probably 2 years now, I think. We actually had, we like to call it, and if they ever listen to this, we're very sorry about this. We sorry. We kind of had like a hippie commune going on in our neighborhood.
It was cool.
We live in a neighborhood. It's like high. Well, it's not that high up in the hills, but we're up on a hill. Within like kind of a rich neighborhood. It's not gated or anything. It's just a private road. But within that neighborhood, some guy, he planted 12 duplexes on the property. And so within that little community, for the most part, we're all pretty close together. And when we first moved in, everybody was really nice. The people across the street from us, when we first pulled up just to look at the place, we're like, oh, there's a tricycle in the front yard, and oh, there's all these toys. Okay, cool. There's kids in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So we ended up oh yeah, let's just get this place. It's cool. We've got this great mountain view. It's away from the busyness of the city. So we got the place, and then our neighbor across the street who's got a kid, she came over, introduced herself. We got to meet the whole family. And then all of a sudden, the people who live below us, they introduce themselves, and before you know it, we're having barbecues every so often. Definitely for New Year's, we kind of had I forget what they called it. It was the festival of new beginnings or something like that. It's very hippie. Awesome.
It's something you want to kind of snap your fingers to.
But it was cool. Everybody in the neighborhood came. Granted, it was maybe 20 people or something, maybe a little more. But
sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
Because of Winn-Dixie or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Have you seen that?
Oh gosh, yes. But I
a fractured community, and the little girl and her dog brings them all together.
Yeah.
You live in that.
Yeah, basically. Well, we had that.
Much like that.
And everybody got along, and we would just pass kids off to one another. We'd watch each other's kids and stuff, and no problem. Yeah. And it literally was hey,
watching each other's kids. It was cool.
Can you watch my kid? Okay,
hey, no problem.
And it wasn't when are you getting back? Are you going to pay me? It wasn't anything
Let me check your history to see if you're on the sex offender list.
Yeah, exactly. It's whoa.
Yeah. I'm going to Google you real quick. I'll get back to you.
Let me do a background check. No, but so we had this great community, and then, we had a few people move out because either it was, too difficult to live there because they increased the pricing. Other people just found better jobs that weren't even in this state. So it was like, okay, well, that's a bummer. No more kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then all the new people who moved in just were older, and they just wanted to keep to themselves because we are in a neighborhood that's quiet. So it was like, I think they just really wanted that quiet solitude, almost hermit style living. And it was like, we come over with a hearty Christian handshake. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, neighbor.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, and like totally like hands up, like, oh, you know, like, who are you? What are you doing? You know, and it was like, we're just trying to get to know you. And we were like, hey, if there's anything you ever need, you know, we're right here, you know, because there actually have been times where people will be like, do you have a cup of sugar? But we don't get that anymore.
Really?
Or even like a cup of milk. Do you have a cup?
Yeah, we actually did. A cup of milk a few times over.
Yeah, because they don't really drink milk, but they
needed it for cooking.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, some recipe that they had.
You know,
that's so funny.
It was that, you know, there was one that in particular that was pretty just. Yeah, it was that does not compute thing. You know, where. We went over and you know, real happy, and here's a kind of a little housewarming gift or whatever, and it was like they didn't get it. They were just kind of like, oh, well, okay, thank you, and they sort of like avoid us now.
Called the FBI.
Yeah.
Well, they slowly start, like, people in the neighborhood are now slowly starting to warm up, and it's like been over a year.
Yeah,
people
exactly.
are like, oh,
right
hey,
before their leases are up.
Yeah. Oh, hey, sorry, you know. I never got to know you guys, and I never said hi, but your son is so adorable, and you guys are so nice. And it's like, wow, it took you a year?
Yeah.
Well, at least you're
later,
identifying that. Thanks, you know. So
how about you? Is your neighborhood out there like very close knit?
No, it's hermits. It's like what you're talking about. It's very peaceful, quiet. Everyone keeps to themselves. It's kind of depressing. I mean, we kind of add to the problem just because of our personalities, and it's hard. I mean, every place I've lived in after college has been like that, where people just almost are afraid of each other. Yeah. And it takes someone who's like a social butterfly to break that. But if you don't have anyone like that in your community, then it just feels very cold. And I miss my home. I miss my small town where I grew up. Yeah. Because it wasn't like that.
Was it?
Yeah.
Shafter,
California.
It
really is a beautiful town.
It
actually,
is.
So.
Well, my parents split up when I was younger, and I would every summer go out and visit my dad, and he lived in Kansas. And Kansas is not necessarily Bible Belt territory, but there's a lot of people there who are Christians, or just a lot of people who go to church, whether it's, you know, Catholicism or, you know, Mormonism, you know, people are going to church.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing for me was just seeing like the huge culture differences between California and Kansas. Like, first of all, when the boys heard that the California girl was coming out, they were like, ho, 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 you know, this total exotic hottie. Because out there, they've got their corn-fed little, you know, good girls, and then out comes me. And,
L.A. woman.
Yeah, exactly. And,
the doors.
But,
yeah,
like, when I get out there, you know, everybody's polite. And when my dad's like, you need to go meet friends. And I'm like, dude, I'm only going to be here for 2 weeks. He's all, no. Go down the street. I want you to hit this house, this house, this house, and this house. Because I know their parents, and they've got kids. You will meet all of them. And for, you know, the 2 weeks during this summer when you're here, you need to go, you know, hang out with them, play with them, do whatever. And it was
how
just
often
like,
does that happen anymore?
and that's another thing, you know, I try to keep this tradition up, but at least I remember my grandparents and my mother, you know, at least they had they would say, can you speak? You know, which really what that meant, you know, when they introduced you to another adult or something like that, you weren't allowed to clam up and not engage. You didn't have to, you know, put on a show and, you know start singing and dancing for them or something, but you were not allowed to just kind of like, you know, nice to meet you, and then just scurry off. It was like, no, introduce yourself, you know, ask them who their children are and go introduce yourself to those children and you know, you go play nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that's becoming a lost art as well, you know. And you know, and like I said, you know, some kids are shy or whatever. You know, there's you can't hold a child's personality against them, but for parents to just kind of check out and say, no, if you'd rather play Magic the Gathering on your iPad and just, you know, you're sitting there right next to 3 or 4 other kids, you know, in this restaurant. Yeah.
Head down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sad.
But
It is sad.
it's, you know, I would say I agree with Tracie as well, and you, Kevin, you know, where I think, you know, you came from that area of California that is not kind of tainted by the typical Southern California culture, and so
it's like the Midwest.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, so you got the pleasure of kind of being detached from that. And I think that in California there is a sort of a pervasive attitude of, hey, there's a lot of us here, so I will kind of select very small groups of people that I'm comfortable with. So, you know, I'm going to find, you know, just this kind of 3 or 4 person group of, nowadays I see a lot of people who cling really hard to their friends from high school and whatnot, and they might only be able to get together once or twice a year, and they try to stay satisfied with something like that. And then the idea of like, hey, let's just go to church, meet some people there, you know. Probably won't like everybody, but odds are 9 out of 10 of them will be nice, and you could probably hit it off with a few of them and develop some new relationships. And people are like, oh, that sounds exhausting. That could take weeks.
Can't I do that on my iPad?
Yeah, you know, can't I just go on Grindr and find somebody? Yeah, you know, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, yeah. And even those meet somebody, you know, not just dating, but just, you know, friendly or whatever sites. It's still there's so much individual control to it. I'm going to find somebody whose profile is so much like mine that, you know, I think it'll be easy. And then when it's not easy, I just click delete and I don't have to try anymore. And it's like, you know, how do you expect to have truly a successful marriage? How do you expect to have a good relationship, working relationship with your coworkers and whatnot, you know, when you've been given so much discretionary power instead of having to be a problem solver, you know, be a critical thinker, work on your rapport, work on your diplomacy.
Iron versus iron.
Yeah.
Dealing with conflict and resolving it.
Yeah. So, you know, and at least in our case, you know, we can at least try to counterbalance some of those things with prayer and you know, hey, you know, Lord can convict me when I'm turning my back, you know, and I shouldn't be, because that's the thing, you know, for the average person out there in the world, or, you know, non-believer, etc., they really only have the dictates of their conscience driving that conviction. But the Bible is very explicit about, we just heard it today in church, my sister-in-law, you know, saying, man, they go over and over and over again with both old Judaic law and New Testament, you know, philosophy, saying, hey, you owe technically a portion of what you've made and done to the fatherless, to the orphan, to the widow, to the stranger. And so, you know, like, hey, the onus is even stronger for us, because instead of just kind of feeling bad, like, oh, well, I'll try to do better next time, you have God in heaven up there saying, hey, look, man, I gave you pretty clear instructions here, and you're kind of blowing me off. And so, who knows? You know, I would hope that the body of Christ could be the kind of the fulcrum in that situation. That I
mean, like, to try harder to not have that total control over situation. What do you mean exactly? Try harder to do what, I guess?
Yeah, in a certain sense, yes. Like kind of releasing the reins of control and just saying, hey, you know what? I'm here for better or worse, and I'm gonna make it work. Or even maybe looking at the greater concepts that are over that body of people, and so hey, maybe if I don't get along with this person quite so well, or they might not be my best friend, but I'm going to support them because there's something bigger here at stake.
Kind of going back, actually to Dune.
Yay!
I know, yay! Nerd,
I'll talk about
nerd
Dune
points.
all day.
I know. It's just when they talk about like fear is the mind killer, and sometimes I think that people, when all they have to do is just look down at their phone, it's almost like a fearful thing that they don't. The whole, I don't really know how to talk to this person, and I'm too scared. I am fearful for how they're going to react. And it's so much easier to hide behind a screen, to be able to text somebody instead of calling them on the phone or seeing them face to face. And I think that, with, if you look at it from like a Christian perspective with God, like, He doesn't want you to be fearful. He wants you to have total reliance in Him, and that, when we open up and we're faithful and we, have His grace on us, that we're able to accomplish anything. Whether, right. Whether we're doing it by ourselves or with His covering, if we're hiding behind a phone or hiding behind, any other technology, computer, stuff like that, we're trying to be in control of things, and it just makes things so awkward. And I think that nowadays, as people start to kind of draw away, like getting God out of everything and the increase of technology, it's definitely, we're coming up into the end times, and it did say there's going to be an increase in technology. And I think the more that we keep like allowing ourselves to just, live that life and not try to put God as the focus, we're definitely going to have a bumpy road. So
it's not going to be the psychological utopia that our modern thinkers thought it would be.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that...
I'm sorry. Wait,
no, go.
Clarify, it being a godless society, which many humanistic people believe that once we achieve that, then everything would be much better.
God forbid. Oh,
yeah, and I'm talking about like early 20th century thinkers. Like going back.
Yeah.
So,
here's a question just to pick your guys' brain here on the panel. I actually have a suspicion that as various things, living here in Goleta, Santa Barbara, and stuff like that, and our college town, there's like a shootout now every few months, which is just blowing up. Like armed robbery is happening left and right. I mean, there's some real big problems that are unfortunately becoming the norm. I actually have a suspicion that there will be a backlash. I actually think, and I even hope that our kids might start to clue into stuff like this and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I've got this technology available, but I'm gonna force myself to put this thing down for a week and reconnect with people. That's what I'm hoping, but I don't know. What's your guys' opinion? Do you think that we'll actually open our eyes and there might be a backlash, or nah?
I think so. I mean, I think there's might even be a movement out there. I'm vague memory here of people who are like anti what you're talking about. In fact, they've even created a phone that all it does is just dial and call. It's like the unsmartphone, like the anti-smartphone. It's a real product that people are actually really into, and I think there might be a backlash already, but it's kind of a small, subtle underground movement.
Yeah.
But maybe that will grow. People just totally get sick of this lifestyle we've created with living in our phones.
There's some people that I've seen where if they go out with a group of friends, like go out to a restaurant, like, we all went out to lunch together, that everybody took out their phones and set it in the middle, and the first person who picks up their phone before the check comes has to pay for everybody's food. So it was like brutal. This desperate, like, okay, I gotta hold out. And actually have like a real conversation with these people. Oh, I really want to Facebook.
I have to engage the people sitting in front of me.
I gotta see what's on Pinterest. I don't know what happened on Board Panda this weekend, but I bet there's some cute pictures of cats doing silly things, and it's like, could you just wait? Like, seriously? And I think that's cool. And then I've also seen this weird, like, remote thing that looks like a giant, like one of those peppercorn breakers, the wooden ones.
I heard about that, yeah.
And there's like a signal in it that, like, they just twist it and everything in the house that's like electronic turns off. And it's like,
wow,
I hope that doesn't
EMP.
Yeah.
It's like, I hope that doesn't like turn off a pacemaker. Oh, Lord, oh no, Grandpa.
You went too far with that salt shaker.
But literally, and then like I saw a viral video on it, and these kids are like crying. They're like, "Oh, Mom, just use the pepper shaker. Everything's off." And it's like, come to dinner.
I want to look that up.
Like, literally, it's like, we're getting ready for dinner. We're going to sit down and we're going to eat food. There's no reason for you to be on your phone. Just stuff your face, and then you could go off and go do whatever.
And talk.
That's like with our kid. He's like, I want to watch a movie while I eat. No, eat your food, and when you're done eating, then you can watch something, or you could play on the computer, or you could play games, games or toys in your room, or go outside and climb a tree and poke snails and stuff. So
seriously.
But I think that some people are starting to see how much technology has changed them personality-wise, and just how ridiculous that they look. Just their head is down and probably getting carpal tunnel and neck issues and stuff from doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, carpal tunnel. I've got iPad neck. I need.
Oh man,
I need.
There's stuff like that.
12,000 milligrams of Vicodin for the rest of my life now.
See the chiropractor.
But no, that is a good. I hadn't really thought about that, but I bet you. I actually wonder if there would, especially with you were saying with this pepper shaker kind of idea. I would love to open a restaurant that literally, like, hey, when you walk in here. The 4G network will not find you.
It's covered in foil. The restaurant is covered in foil.
When you walk in here, you have walked into the cave of
nothing.
Of ancient times.
I think that would actually freak people out.
You're gonna have to sit down and talk with the people. And hey, you know what? The thing is that you don't have to get puritanical with it. There's plenty of times that I'm sitting down, speaking with people, and saying, "Hey, I saw this thing on Facebook, and it was really interesting." I mean, it does provide some points for conversation and whatnot, but that's different than ignoring the people around you when you shouldn't be. You know
what that sounds like? That sounds like when they banned smoking, and you can only smoke if you go outside the restaurant. That's how it's going to be. Is you can't use your phone unless you go outside.
Yeah,
go burn a phone. Like go smoke a phone and come back.
I'm gonna go have a phone stogie. I'll
a phone break.
You come back and you smell like people are like, oh.
Would you say that's a fair analogy though? The addiction level is it? No, I think it's a fair analogy.
Oh man, yeah.
Well, people use the quote unquote smoke break because you know how there's some people are like, oh, I need my smoke break at work, and other people are just like, oh, I have to have my phone break, and they go out and they use their phone. It's like, again, does your time need does it need to have this right now? Like, couldn't you wait?
Yeah, well, and it's also like a quality quantity thing, like I said, it's not like we need to all go smash our phones with hammers and try to return back to the medieval days in order to find ourselves again or
1985.
But that's the thing, you can pull a lot out of just having a meal where you refuse to use your phones, and if we really could just try to incorporate that into just some small fraction of our lives, we might be saving ourselves from a lot more trouble than we think.
Yeah,
definitely. Well, we're at about 45 minutes. This might be a good place to stop.
Yeah.
Unless anyone else has any burning thoughts.
Well, no. Well, yeah. Let's just do parting shots. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I would say it was the thing that kept coming to my mind as we were talking about this whole society being further away is actually something that Moses Sumney said. Kojo's son, he's a friend of ours at the church. He's actually a recording artist, very successful one now, but he said something in an interview where the more he spends time on social media, the sadder he gets, the more depressed he gets. And it just made me think that the place where we go for happiness actually makes a lot of people less happy.
Yeah.
And it's just this weird thing that you see all these relationships, these networks, and your friends, but it almost makes you wish that you were part of their lives, but you can't really be part of all these people's lives that are spread across the country. But you see their lives, and it makes you want to emotionally engage, but you can't. You can only engage by liking or commenting, but it's just never enough.
Yeah.
So it's almost like all these like half-hearted connections that pull you in, but you can never really get into anyone's life. Mm-hmm. And it turns you into a cyber stalker. Because that's the only way to deal with it is just going too far. So,
how about you, wifey?
Well, for me, it's I would say just us drawing further away from God, and that as we draw further, well, not all of us, but I think as a whole in general, that as we kind of kick God out of our lives, that we're going to kind of put false idols in front of us. And definitely, technology is moving its way up to be our next, what is it, a Baal shrine or a Baal, idol. So it's just like, oh man, okay. But, I'm hoping that with, our children, like, right here with us, but even anybody listening, that we can start to see those signs and show them that, like, no, there are other things in life. This is, this shouldn't be the main focus of your life, and really kind of draw closer to God. And he actually will reveal more than what Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest or any of those things could ever, be able to post. It's what's in our heart, and it's what God, guides us with. So
that's awesome. I wish I had said that.
That's why I'm
get a
here.
That was much better.
Can I get a mulligan?
Yeah.
Can I podcast mulligan? I guess if I had a parting shot, boy, I was so into what you guys were saying, I hadn't even really thought about if I would really express something. But I guess I would just say that when I oversimplify the idea of relationship, there is focusing on yourself and focusing on number one, and then there's focusing, for us who are Christians, there's focusing on the Lord. And I remember people saying, in church services, that when your gaze goes up, then it's easier for your gaze to go horizontal, meaning when you consider the Lord and you consider what God has done for you and the blessings in your life and how much you need to have a relationship with a source of love and truth, that in turn puts compassion in your heart for the people that are nearby you. And we could try to blame technology, but the truth is that we're using that technology to just look at ourselves. And so if there's an idol, it's really ourselves. We're building a shrine. Look how awesome my life is. Look at this concert I went to. Look at this vacation I just took, etc., etc. We try to sell this golden life to our friends, whether or not we're trying to make them jealous or just share something with them. We're once again sort of focusing on ourselves first, and then God and friends and whatnot sort of becomes secondary. So, if I have listeners out there that I could give advice to, I'd say, just take a moment this week to put your phone away and make sure that you can't hear it buzz, you can't hear it do anything, and and look out at the world and thank the God who created all this beauty for you to absorb, and like let it soak in for just long enough that you start to care about the people around you.
Yeah.
And do something, special for them. Put a smile on their face. Look them in the eye. Tell somebody that you love them and mean it, and we could, God is possible. Anything is possible with God. So, then if you wind up accidentally kind of falling back into the semi-narcissistic, overly distracted, whatever it might be, at least you had a recent connection with God that he can then kind of shoot back through that connection and tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, man, your son wants to play Legos with you and you're too busy playing Castle Clash, man. Quit it, and God doesn't need much room. He's so powerful that if you give him an inch, he'll use that way better than if you would have tried to do it in your own strength. So be good humans.
Amen. All right. Signing out. Bye.